In the sprawling, sun-scorched promise of 1960s Los Angeles, a man's throat was slit from ear to ear, the wound so deep, so savage, it nearly severed his head from his shoulders. His body, left in a forgotten alley, was not just discarded, it was arranged, a grotesque masterpiece of death. And next to him, a small, grimy cup was found, filled to the brim with his own blood. This was not a robbery gone wrong. This was a ritual. And it was only the beginning. In a city that sold dreams to the world, a relentless nightmare was stalking its most invisible citizens, a predator who would earn the name the Skid Row Slasher. But who was this phantom, hunting the lost souls in the City of Angels? The answer lies in a name most have never heard, a name that should be whispered alongside the most infamous killers in history, Vaughn Greenwood. The story of this monster is a chilling reminder that the most profound evil often wears a mask of complete and utter banality. Before we unmask the man behind one of the most terrifying killing sprees in American history, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss a case. We have a community of crime enthusiasts here at Cold Crime Cases, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, as we dive deep into the abyss. Vaughn Orrin Greenwood was born into a world that never wanted him. Brought into existence in Pennsylvania in 1944, his first memory was likely one of abandonment. Cast off by his parents, he became a ghost child, a whisper drifting through the cold, indifferent bureaucracy of the foster care system. He was a puzzle no one cared to solve, a silent, withdrawn boy with eyes that seemed to look right through you, never connecting, never settling. He was a phantom in the system, passed from one temporary home to another, each rejection chipping away at whatever innocence he might have had, leaving behind a hollow space where a soul was supposed to grow. As boyhood bled into the volatile years of adolescence, the silence curdled into something far more menacing. His record began to speak for him: truancy, theft, and sudden, shocking bursts of violence. By the time he was a man, he had perfected the art of being unseen. He was a ghost, flitting between cities, a transient with no ties, no roots, and no future. The only thing he collected was a lengthening rap sheet of petty offenses and increasingly disturbing behavior. He left no friends, no lovers, no legacy in his wake, only a trail of unease. But beneath that vacant surface, a darkness was taking root, a malignant seed of violence that was beginning to sprout. The first true glimpse of the monster within came in the mid-1960s. In Chicago, Greenwood was arrested for an assault of shocking brutality. With no apparent provocation, he had attacked a man with a broken bottle, a frenzy of rage that left even hardened officers disturbed. He was sent for psychiatric evaluation, where doctors noted his paranoid delusions and a fractured sense of reality. They saw the storm clouds gathering, but the system, overburdened and blind, failed to see the hurricane on the horizon. He was not committed. He served his time, was released, and simply vanished. He reappeared in the one place a man like him could truly dissolve, the sprawling, desperate underbelly of Los Angeles known as Skid Row. This was not the LA of movie premieres and palm-lined boulevards. This was a gaping wound in the city's soul, a concentration of human misery where the broken, the addicted, and the forgotten were swept away. Here, anonymity was currency, and no one asked questions you didn't want to answer. It was a perfect hunting ground. Surrounded by a population of people society had already thrown away, Vaughn Greenwood found his calling. And the killing began. The first body to be officially linked to his reign of terror was found in 1964, slumped in a filthy alley that smelled of cheap wine and despair. The victim was a nameless man, his life story erased by poverty, his only possessions the ragged coat on his back. His throat had been laid open with a single, terrifyingly precise slice. It was the work of a hand that was both steady and merciless. But it was the detail nearby that truly unnerved investigators: a small tin cup, placed carefully on the ground, filled with the victim's blood. A terrible sacrament. There were no witnesses. No fingerprints. No clues. In a city drowning in violence, his death was just another drop in a bloody ocean. The case went cold, filed away and forgotten. The killer had tasted blood, and his thirst was far from quenched. Less than a year later, the nightmare repeated itself. Another homeless man, another alley, another throat open to the sky and a gruesome smile carved from ear to ear. His body, too, was meticulously arranged, as if for an audience that only the killer could see. And beside him, the killer's calling card, another vessel, this time a cracked ceramic cup, filled with blood. Whispers of a pattern began to circulate through the precinct, a dark theory of a single, ritualistic killer. But with nothing concrete to connect the scenes, it remained just that, a ghost story, a phantom haunting the edges of their jurisdiction. Then, as suddenly as it began, the killing stopped. For nearly a decade, the city breathed a sigh of relief. The monster, it seemed, had moved on, or perhaps was dead or incarcerated for some other crime. The truth was far simpler and far more chilling. During those silent years, Vaughn Greenwood was exactly where the system wanted him, behind bars, serving an almost 9-year sentence for burglary. The cage was locked. But the monster inside was not sleeping. It was waiting. It was patient. Upon his release in the early 1970s, Greenwood didn't seek a new life. He didn't try to reform. He made his way directly back to the poison that fed him, back to the decaying heart of Los Angeles, back to Skid Row. The cage was now open, and the monster, patient and unchanged, walked right back to his hunting grounds. What followed was not just a resurgence of violence, it was a horrifying acceleration, a blitzkrieg of terror. Between the final months of 1974 and the dawn of 1975, a tidal wave of death crashed over Skid Row. In a terrifyingly short span, 11 men were slaughtered. The grisly signature was unmistakable: the slashed throats, the ritualistic precision. But now, the killer's cruelty had evolved, his theatricality reaching new, depraved heights. One victim was found propped up against a dumpster, his eyes forced open to stare into the abyss of the night. His limbs had been carefully positioned, a human puppet in the killer's macabre theater. Another man was discovered with cryptic symbols carved into the flesh of his chest, a hellish calligraphy that baffled investigators. The victims all shared a tragic profile. They were the city's ghosts, homeless, elderly, often physically disabled. They were the people society had deemed disposable. To Greenwood, they were not just easy targets, they were spiritually unclean. In his warped, fractured mind, he was not a murderer. He was a purifier. He believed he was on a divine mission to cleanse the city, to eliminate those he judged as infected with sin. Each murder was a holy ritual. The crime scenes were a testament to his delusion. Some victims had been washed post-mortem, a baptism to scrub them of their worldly filth before the final, bloody ritual. Others had strange marks drawn on their hands or foreheads, symbols painted in their own blood. The police, desperate for a lead, theorized it could be the work of a sadistic cult performing human sacrifices in the city's shadows. The media, never one to let a terrifying story go, fanned the flames of fear. They gave him his name, the Skid Row Slasher. The name stuck, and it spread like a virus through the homeless community. Skid Row, already a place of desperation, transformed into a landscape of pure terror. Men who once found solitude in the darkness now huddled together for safety, their eyes constantly scanning the shadows. Paranoia was a palpable thing, a cold dread that clung to the air. They whispered stories of a silent figure who could materialize from the gloom, a man sometimes described as eerily calm, almost polite, just before the knife came out. He might offer a sip of wine or a piece of bread, a final act of communion before delivering his twisted form of salvation. For the detectives on the case, it was like hunting a ghost. The slasher was a forensic phantom. He left no fingerprints, no recoverable DNA, no murder weapon. He vanished from his crime scenes as if into thin air, leaving behind only his brutal handiwork and the lingering scent of blood. The city was in the grip of a monster they couldn't see, and the body count continued to rise. The terror seemed endless, until one frigid night in January 1975, when the slasher finally made a mistake. A man named William Graham, a transient, stumbled into a downtown clinic, clutching a deep, bleeding gash across his neck. He was alive. By a miracle, by a fraction of an inch, the blade had missed his carotid artery. He told the terrified staff he'd been offered a drink by a stranger, who then suddenly lunged at him with a knife. Graham, in a desperate fight for his life, had kicked his attacker away and fled into the night. He gave a chilling description, a tall, gaunt man with hollow eyes, who muttered strange phrases about cleansing the body and purifying the street. Detectives swarmed the area of the attack, and in the ensuing struggle, the Phantom had dropped something. A letter. It was addressed to a man named Vaughn. That single name sent a jolt through the investigation. Detective Mark Reynolds recognized it. It had come up before, in hushed interviews on Skid Row. Witnesses had mentioned a peculiar loner named Vaughn, a man who would offer strangers drinks from a rusted tin cup, insisting it would make them clean. At the time, it had been dismissed as the ramblings of the unstable. Now, it was the key. A frantic search of police records unearthed Vaughn Greenwood. The file was a roadmap of horror, a recent release from prison, a history of violent assault, and a paper trail of psychiatric reports detailing his messianic delusions. One report documented Greenwood's claim that he was an instrument of God, chosen to purify the wicked by separating the flesh from the soul. Another detailed his obsession with blood, his belief that collecting it could trap the demons that resided within sinners. The hunt was on. Within days, they found him. He had taken refuge in a place that seemed born from a nightmare, a crumbling, abandoned church on the forgotten edge of Los Angeles. The doors were chained from within, the windows blacked out with grime and cardboard. A SWAT team breached the entrance, expecting a violent confrontation. Instead, they found silence. Vaughn Greenwood was sitting alone in the cavernous main hall, bathed in the flickering glow of dozens of candles. Behind him, on the desecrated chancel, was a makeshift altar. On it lay blood-caked clothing, ritualistic bowls, charred papers, and the gleaming blade of a large butcher's knife. He didn't fight. He didn't run. As the officers surrounded him, he simply looked up and smiled. It was not a smile of fear or surprise, but of serene, knowing acceptance. He knew they were coming. This was always part of the plan. The church was a treasure trove of horror. They found evidence linking him directly to the slaughter, blood samples, personal items belonging to the victims, and handwritten journals. The journals were a descent into madness. In them, Greenwood chronicled his holy war. He described the act of slitting a man's throat as a moment of ecstatic release, sending the spirit into the hands of the Father. He was not a murderer. In his mind, he was a savior. He was not taking a life, he was liberating a soul from its filthy mortal vessel. The case of the Skid Row slasher exploded into the national headlines. Vaughn Greenwood was charged with 11 murders, though investigators have always believed the true number is much, much higher, with similar killings in Chicago and elsewhere bearing his signature. In court, he was a chilling spectacle. He remained placid, smiling, sometimes whispering to an unseen companion. When the judge finally asked him if he had anything to say for himself, he looked up, his eyes clear, and uttered the 5 words that would forever define his evil: "They're clean now. I did my job." He was found guilty and sentenced to spend the rest of his natural life in a cage, a punishment he accepted with the same eerie calm. He died in prison in 2020, an old man, alone and forgotten by the world, leaving no mourners behind. After his arrest, the killings on Skid Row stopped, but the fear lingered. For the men and women who survived that reign of terror, the memory of the slasher never faded. They had lived and slept just feet away from a human monster. Some had even seen his face, spoken to him. The quiet man who offered strange drinks. The gaunt figure who muttered to himself. He was just another broken soul in a sea of them. But beneath that unassuming exterior lay a capacity for evil that was almost incomprehensible. Vaughn Greenwood didn't need a mask or a costume. His monstrosity was cloaked in something far more terrifying: quiet patience and a gentle smile. He proves that the most dangerous demons are the ones that walk beside us, unnoticed, biding their time. And it leaves us with a deeply unsettling question: how many others like him are out there, silent and smiling, just waiting for the right moment to strike? If this case chilled you to the bone, please show your support by liking this video, sharing it with someone who loves true crime, and subscribing to Cold Crime Cases. Your engagement helps us continue to shed light on the darkest corners of human nature. We'll see you in the next one.